3 weeks ago, Sakizo Illustrator posted this image of little sewing girls. I spent 2 weeks making her the pair of scissors on her back, and now I have 3 weeks to finish this, and I have a lot of stuff to do still, but I have made huge progress on the dress. So, here was my issue with this. To me, the color of that dress looks like purple. But then I was like isolating the color in Illustrator and on Milanote, and it was showing that it's not purple at all. It's actually like a really light pink. And so I kind of started to panic because I bought white fabric because I knew that whatever color this is, you can't buy it in the color, like in the fabric that I wanted. But I kind of had a color panic and was like, Pins, what color is this? And even Pins was like, that's pink. But I was like, but no, it looks purple. And so my theory on this situation is that the dresses are in fact purple. The reason I think that Illustrator and Milanote are picking the color up as pink is because I think that this here that we're looking at, this color, is actually just the color of the paper that Sakizo is using. The paper is off-white, and she's putting purple on a yellow-toned paper, which when viewed with your human eyes still kind of reads purple, but to a computer, the purple has neutralized and has now become pink. There's your color theory, because purple and yellow are on opposite sides of the color wheel. So when you put them on top of each other, they cancel each other out. All that to say, I decided to say, I don't care what the hex code is on this. Don't care. My eye sees purple and I'm going to dye it purple. And lucky for me, a wonderful thing that exists on the internet is the RIT dye color chart thing. It's this thing they have where they have all of these different color swatches, and you can click on them, and then it will tell you what dyes you need and what ratio you need of those dyes to get that color. I really like this lilac color, and lucky for me, I actually had both of the dyes needed for it. Unfortunately for me, the RIT dye color chart is a lying liar full of lies, because it told me it was like, what, 2 parts pink to 1 part blue, okay? I did exactly what it said for the color I did. It said 2 parts pink to 1 part blue. I ended up doing 11 grams of blue and 118 grams of petal pink. That's a 10-to-1 ratio. So yeah, I did a bunch of dye tests to get the color that I wanted, and I'm still not super happy with the color that I got. I really feel like I should have put a little bit of black or brown in there to sort of like dull the purple. I've kind of ended up with just like a true like pretty lilac, and I kind of wanted a little deeper of a color, but it's okay. It ended up pretty. Now we gotta talk about all of the stuff that needed to be off-white, because I cut that section out to become off-white, but then I also had some lace that I bought that was 100% cotton, but it was bright white. And so, mostly so that I didn't have to go buy dye, and because I had this, I decided it was time to do another coffee dye, which means silliness and lighting a candle for some reason, because when you make coffee in a sewing video, you have to light a candle for some reason. But this is just the most disgusting coffee ever. This is like a full cup of instant coffee mixed with maybe a cup of hot water. It's truly a coffee concentrate, and it is certainly not something you would want to drink. But the things I do to make people laugh, this is gonna be awful. If you don't hit the like button for that, you're not a nice person. Honestly, this is definitely expired. That helped a lot, though. Thanks, Pete. So don't attempt to drink the coffee for your coffee dye. It's absolutely disgusting. I don't know that you'd want to swallow it because it tastes so bad, but you certainly can taste it because it's just coffee. Horrifically strong coffee. At least it isn't tea, though. True. No! You can actually also dye fabric with tea. In some ways it might seem like you're just staining it, but there's actually, I think it's called tannins. The tannins or whatever in coffee, I think they're in tea too. They like make the color bind better. To be honest, what actually happened was I dyed it with coffee, and then I dyed it with Rit dye, and then I added coffee to the second Rit dye bath to get it more orange brown than pink. I was trying to also match all of my off-whites, but there are several different off-whites on the costume. But whatever. Before we get into the skirt construction, I need to establish a breakdown of this skirt and how I decided to pattern it, because it's a little bit strange. Because the skirt is a little bit strange because it is an illustration. It is not a real skirt in the real world. It's a drawing. I sectioned out the skirt into 1, 2, 3, 4 different sections. So this top tier here encompasses from here to these pin tucks. I'm interpreting these two lines as pin tucks. They could also be interpreted as lines of piping. Either way, for me, the first section of my skirt is from the top of the waistband to the top of these pin tucks. And I decided to do the top of the skirt as a pleated circle skirt, which is a difficult thing to do because it's a circle and you're trying to pleat it into straight things. So it's weird. And so if you've ever made a Sailor Moon skirt, you may be familiar with the fact that pleating a circle is actually kind of a challenge, and getting the math right on it is also kind of a challenge. Another thing that is a challenge, and a reason why you might want to make the top of this skirt just straight, is that pin tucks on a curved hem are possible but difficult and require a lot of time. And if you're short on time like I am, it makes a lot more sense to exclude the pin tucks from the circle skirt and make them their own straight panel that then gets attached to the circle skirt. Layer 2 is a strip that just has 2 pin tucks on it that are the same color of the circle skirt that are going to get attached to the circle skirt, okay? Layer 3, you might immediately gut reaction think that is the start of a ruffle. However, the illustration shows the pleats of this piece being in line with the pleats of the skirt above it, which implies that this is not a ruffle, but a band, a straight band. Then that is a straight band that goes underneath the straight band of pin tucks, not a ruffle. Underneath that is a row of knife pleats. And that's pretty self-explanatory. So, because I decided to make it a circle skirt, the first thing I needed to do was assemble the circle skirt and let it hang for a little bit so that the bias of the circle skirt could level itself out so that I could make sure everything was the same length. Because I love myself, I decided that finishing this circle skirt top part meant including insert pockets. They're not super big insert pockets. Are they called insert pockets or inset? They're insert pockets. They're the kind that goes in the seam. So you just like sew the pocket part to both sides of the seam, and then instead of sewing all the way up the seam, you sew up the seam and then go around the pocket part and then go up to the top of the seam, and that makes the pocket bag. And then you press it real good and everything looks really nice and pretty and good, and you got a little pocket. They're very easy. You have no excuse to not put insert pockets, at least into your cosplay. But yeah, let that hang for quite a while, and after it did hang for quite a while, I started trying to do an initial run of figuring out where these pleats were going to be, but nothing that I did at this stage really ended up being permanent. I need to shout out pleatcalculator.web.app, which is just a website where you can put in pleat calculations, which is very helpful. Next up, the pin tuck band, or tucks. They're not pin tucks, because pin tucks are like the size of the head of a pin, right? These are pretty big tucks. And because I needed 2 of them, essentially just what I did was I took my strip of fabric and I kind of folded it the way you would single fold bias tape, except it's not a bias strip. This would look better and be a better hanging skirt if this entire band was a bias strip, but I didn't buy enough fabric for that. Essentially, I just folded them on either side, like folded down either side of this piece of fabric, and then sewed a fold a ½ inch away from each of the edges of those folds, and then pressed all of that flat, and it gave me a little tiny band with 2 little tucks in it. Very easy. So much easier than trying to do curved tucks. What a fun shot of Turbo Granny, though. I figured out that fits on top of my thread cone, and so it's been there, and it's been being a lucky charm. Anyway, I just took that and sewed it directly onto the bottom of the circle skirt. Curved tucks require, like, very careful pressing and doing all of... It can be done, but it's a lot of extra work, and it's a lot easier to either just not make any of the dress a circle or cheat. Next one, also easy peasy. Long strip that I added lace to the top and the bottom of. This is the one that has all of these like rose details and like the ruler and like the little sewing pin motifs on it. All of that stuff has to go on this band. Actually not going to do the roses or the pins or the ruler until the entire dress is assembled for very specific reasons, but here's a good look at the several different tiers of the skirt. My tuck band, my off-white band, and then my knife pleats, which are the next thing. So those started as a giant strip of fabric. I also completely like skipped over, of course, all of the different math. All the different math that I had to do to get the calculations of how big these... It's not even that crazy a math. It's literally just like, well, this is how long I want the skirt to be. If the circle skirt is 15 inches and this is and this part is 2 inches and this part is this many inches, it's basically like I found the circumference of the circle skirt and then these two were the same length and then this bottom one needed to be 3 times the size of that length. So it's really just circumference and multiplying by 3. Okay, there's a really long just strip of fabric that had a lot of stuff that needed to be done to it before it could go onto the dress. So the first thing I actually did was hem it. I did a double fold hem, so I went through the entire thing and pressed down a little 1/4 inch and then went through again and pressed that up again another 1/4 inch, and then I sewed that seam in, and then I could go through and start pleating it. I measured to do these, but I didn't like mark it at all. I actually just sat there with a ruler by the pleats, and every 3 inches I measured, I picked up at 3 inches, and then I pulled it down and I would press it. So it's like, oh, it's not eyeballed. I had a ruler sitting there. I just didn't actually mark every 3 inches. I just picked stuff up where it was and put it down, and so they're not exact pleats, but they take a while. They take a lot of pressing and pinning and prepping. And then what I decided to do was I hemmed them on one side, but then I actually left them raw on the top so that once they were pleated, I could take them to my serger and serge everything all at once folded so that like the top could be finished, but it wouldn't be as bulky as if I just serged the entire strip and then folded it. Then I've got 2 layers of serging sitting on top of each other instead of just having one. The knife pleats are so pretty, aren't they? They're just little perfect little folds. I suppose you could do this as a ruffle. That is the other thing with Sakizo's work, is you can kind of interpret it as a ruffle or as a pleat. It doesn't really matter. What I decided to do was actually put the pleat onto that off-white band, and then I sewed the off-white band onto the skirt. At this point, I had actually basted in some of the box pleats at the top of the circle skirt, but I would end up messing with those a whole lot more later. But here's how that all looked all together. Look at that. Look at that thing. It sits a little weird. It needs a little fussing because those pin tucks make it want to sit kind of strangely. One of my problems with this project was that I really, like, the entire time I've just been like, so do I need to do all of these details before this goes on to the dress? Or should I wait until after? And the decision I came to was after, because the pins on here sit really specifically within the pleats that they're on. And so I really need them to be in their final form, which is why instead of like doing all of the detail in the skirt, I went ahead and did the bodice. This is, for the billionth time, the Kiana Bonolo leather dress pattern that I have used for so many bodices for me. Here's the thing. Do yourself a favor and find yourself a bodice pattern that goes from your natural waist all the way up to your shoulders, includes your neckline, and has princess seams, and fits you perfectly. Find you something that does that, or make that from a duct tape pattern, or be a fancy person and do like the actual drafting part or whatever, so that whenever you need any kind of bodice, you just have a thing you can go ahead and go to. And I actually lined it with cotton duck, and I did that for the sake of the skirt is probably when it has all of its decorations on it. The skirt's probably going to be a little heavy, and I wanted to give the bodice the best chance of like not stretching out or anything and being able to handle the weight of everything on it, so I flatlined it with duck cloth. Ooh, look at those beautiful seams. Okay, box pleating circle skirts is not easy or fun or good or something you should attempt very much. And I really could have and should have just made this just a regular, like, fully straight paneled skirt instead of doing the circle skirt on top. Like, the circle skirt looks good, don't get me wrong, but it just is very hard to get circle skirt pleats to do what you want them to. And so there was a lot of just, like, fussing and pinning and fixing and sewing and redoing, messing with the stupid pleats until they did what I wanted them to. Eventually, though, they did what I wanted them to, and I was ready to get them on this bodice, and that, you know, also involved like taking out the back ones and kind of figuring out what I wanted to do with the back, because of course the back didn't like I measured and did the math based on how my measurements were, and still there was like extra pleating. I don't know, it's a lot, but I got that on and it looked really good, and I tried it on, and let me tell you, this thing is so cute. I'm so happy with this dress. It is so stinking cute. The color is so cute. I'm having a lavender summer. This is a lavender lemonade. Super cute. Love it. So now we get to the sleeves. And the sleeves were quite an ordeal, to the point where I have 4 mock-ups to show you of these sleeves. Mock-up 1, the bodice is the Kiana Bonolo pattern, and I also love the sleeves of that leather dress pattern, and I've used them a lot. And so my first attempt was to take her pattern and essentially just shorten it, and that did not work at all. And if you look, this is an incredibly complex sleeve shape. It really isn't puffed up here. It's primarily puffed here, but then it kind of has like this downward shape to it. Like it's literally bell shaped. It's shaped like a bell, but with like a round bottom to the bell. Okay, it's a very specific shape, and it required a very specific pattern. I pulled out the monster clay and I did a tape pattern. I formed a shape as close to that sleeve shape as I could, and then I got that in tape, got that flat, got that in Illustrator, and that became these shapes. But the other thing I did in Illustrator was I measured, because you can digitally measure things in Illustrator. It's a little complicated for me to explain, but it's actually, you can get exact digital line segment measurements in Illustrator, like of curves. You can measure curves perfectly in Illustrator. I measured the top of the original sleeve pattern, and knowing what the top of that needed to be in length, I fussed with the top of this until it matched that. That initial pattern try became this. So much closer. Obviously a little deflated, not looking super great with like nothing in it. The only problem with this was it was like too tight here. So then I messed with that. Then I like made this one too big up here, and it made it poof at the shoulder in a way I really didn't like. I got to number 4. I actually reverted to the first pattern and just made this part a little bigger. And I was very happy with this. Again, there's no support in there. This was looking like what I wanted. Now I'll show you how it was constructed. First of all, lace needed to go on this top panel. Just sewed that on the top and bottom. Pretty good. Then the weird circle piece needed to get sewn to that piece. For finishing, the larger piece is serged on every single side, including where it goes into the arm's eye. But the circle-y piece is actually only serged on the larger edge because the inner edge seemed a little too difficult to get through the serger without messing it up. But those got sewn together. Look how crazy that looks. Look at that. Ooh, absolutely nailing what I wanted. Then I had the cuff part, and the very end of the cuff is a little ruffle, and I am super happy with how these tiny little ruffles came out, and we will actually talk about my incredibly perfect and beautiful baby hems when I talk about the collar. But they are just regular ruffles done with the, set your sewing machine to the longest stitch you have. Don't do back stitches. Sew 2 lines next to each other and then pull the bobbin threads. You want 2 so that it makes this nice flat ruffly part that makes it easy to actually sew it into the piece. But also 2 means it might not actually snap when you're sitting there fiddling with it, and if it does snap, it sucks and it's really annoying and it's not fun. So sewed that to the bottom of the cuff, and then to cover up all of that yucky stuff, I actually made myself a little piece of bias tape to cover it up. If you wanted to be really professional with this, you would actually want to line this piece like a real cuff has a real lining. However, I did not want to really line anything in here that didn't need to be lined because I want to wear it in Florida. So I just did the bias tape. And then because that's the part that's going to be like right here on my arm, and because that curved part was too curved to go through the serger, I decided to also seal that in double fold bias tape. Also forgot to mention I needed to ease the curved seam onto this straight seam, kind of the way you do the top of sleeves sometimes, where I didn't really fully gather it. I just gathered like the middle of it a little bit. Then I put the bias tape on, mostly for the sake of making it not itchy. I could have just serged that part, but I don't like serging. Serging can be kind of itchy on your arms, for me at least, so I put it in bias tape just for my own comfort, but also it's incredibly fancy. And then I sewed up the sides, but the thing is on the cuff, I actually did a French seam, so I actually took just the cuff, put it wrong sides together, did a seam on just the cuff. See that? Trimmed off the excess part of that seam and then pressed that a little bit and then turned everything right sides together and sewed the actual seam all the way up the sleeve. And so then I could turn it inside out. And I got, y'all, these sleeves are... Look at these sleeves! Look at them! Oh my god! I love them so much. I only have like a week and a half until MetroCon. There's a lot left to be done, but I have made huge progress. Apron time. Are we ready for apron time? Apron! Okay, this beautiful thing is linen. I had just a little tiny bit of linen left over from my second wedding dress. And then there's like cotton lining. And then I also have a little bit of leftover cotton twill from the capsule wardrobe that I'm using to reinforce it. No, it has all of those little buttons on it. I kind of did everything wrong with this apron. Like, that's not right. But you know what? I'm running out of time. And so it is what it is. But the reality of this apron situation is literally all I did was eyeball where all of this lace needed to go. I sewed on all of the lace by flipping it up, sewing it down, and then flipping it back over. And then I started making a bunch of mistakes when it came to the lace that goes around the outside. There's also a pocket in here. That is just an extra layer that goes on top of it. Anyway, all this lace on the side, I did very wrong, and this lace on the bottom, I did very wrong. This lace around the edge should be one continuous piece that goes down the side, over the bottom, and up the other side, and I should have done mitered corners with the lace, which you can do. But I don't know. I think what happened was I forgot that there's an extra layer of the little lace at the bottom over top of the big lace. So I cut them apart and then just like had to do really messy, stupid things to make it work. But you know what? I actually don't even like the way the lace on the side looks, and so every time I've put it on, I've just kind of been folding that lace over and acting like it doesn't exist, and it's my cosplay, and I can treat it that way if I want to. Anyway, once the linen layer had all of its lace on there and the pocket on there, I just bag-lined it with a layer of cotton. Interesting thing, though. Another thing I just like could not figure out with this, you would think an apron would be easy. It's a ding-dang apron. What I ended up doing with the bag lining for this is I actually just bag lined it from the side, across the top, and down the other side, but not on the bottom, for the sake of letting that lace hang free. And like, there is definitely a way to do this and have all of it be bag lined and get it out of like a little hole, but you know what? I just went for it because I'm running out of time. I only have a week and a half left and I still have so much to do. Yeah, sewed that together. And then like basically immediately had to pick that apart because I forgot to put the straps in there. Yeah, I had to unpick these top corners up here just so I could get the straps pulled in there and then re-sew the top just with the bag lining for the sake of the straps. The waistband is actually just top stitched on there, but it's very cute. I like it a lot. I will say, if you look very closely, because I eyeballed the lace, some of it is a little extra wonky. Some of it's a little, very uneven. In the back, we have a parachute clip that gets covered by this beautiful butt bow. And then the straps actually have swivel clips. I think that's what these are called. They have swivel clips, and they actually attach to the little adjuster thing on the waistband. If you wanted to be really fancy with this, ideally I'd want to see a button on the waist strap and a buttonhole on the strap that goes over your shoulder. But ain't nothing wrong with a swivel clip and a parachute clip. Cool thing that I put in here very specifically for me is on the backside in the lining, I have a mic pocket. Okay, there's that. I only have one in here, but buttons. These go on the apron. So these started as a fresco drawing. I just used I'm sure you can do this in like Procreate too. The thing where you have like the symmetry that goes all different directions. Kind of using the image as a reference, but since they're so small and so hard to tell what's going on, I kind of just did whatever I wanted for the most part. Drew them all in fresco, and then I cut them on my laser cutter. There's no reason my laser cutter should be zipping back and forth from button to button, but you know, I really don't have a mastery of how to make it do exactly what I want it to yet. But I don't care, they look really cool. It just took forever to get them cut. They look awesome though. Each one, this one, it has the most layers to it, but each one is basically 2 layers of laser cutting. I'm gonna have to do this to myself, and it's gonna look really silly. I cannot perform where I keep having to hear brrr. I can't hear the brrr anymore. So, to put these together, all I really did was do like a nice thick coat of Mod Podge. I actually painted the bottom layers first so that I wouldn't have to try and get into those little crevices, and then did a huge thick coat of Mod Podge and just kind of stuck the top layers onto the other ones. And then I actually have done some resin coating on them, which is why I only have this one, because the other ones I didn't mix up enough resin, and one of them actually got kind of messed up. One of them looks so messed up. It's this one, which honestly, this one is my least favorite, so it's fine. This one ended up being my favorite. I was gonna say, and I just did the resin in that little void in the middle, but I was like coating the entirety of some of the other ones. Whatever resin they sell at Michael's, the like amazing cast or whatever it's called, they now have a one that is just for like coating stuff. It said it had like a 20-minute working time. It got goopy within like 7-10 minutes. Like when I clear coat resin stuff, I'm used to mixing for like minimum 5 minutes. I I guess I should have only mixed this resin for like 3 minutes because I did not have enough time to like get it on these efficiently. But this one is okay, so it gets to be the favorite, but one of them is messed up now. But that's okay. I do need to get them sewn onto the apron, but I have a week to do that. Okay, are we ready to hear about the insane little rolled baby hems that I have done on this collar? They're so tiny and good. Okay, I have finally mastered the art of the tiny little rolled hem. This is how you get the most perfectest, tiniest rolled baby hems on the sewing machine. Not the serger. Not those scrunched up, looked like they came out knowing how to knit their own hat baby hems. We're talking cute little chubby-cheeked, adorable babies ready to be exploited for content. This technique has been elusive to me for my entire time that I have been sewing. It is something I have definitely been trying to do since I started sewing, and until now, I couldn't do it. And these are the things that really, really matter. The first thing that matters is the fabric. This is a 100% cotton voile, so it's a very thin sheer fabric. Thin fabric is going to do this better, obviously, but also a natural fiber fabric is going to do this better. And it is also incredibly essential that the fabric is a plain weave, meaning the fibers are just plainly crisscrossing. Look at this. Do you see how this is kind of like, you see these lines going like diagonally? This is not a plain woven weave. This is not a plain weave. Do you see that? You see how it's all just crisscrossed? Nothing weird or different. It's all just crisscrossed. This makes it so much easier to do the baby hems. It's so important. It being a natural fiber, I think, is also important. Natural fibers, cotton, linen, silk, plant-based fibers, animal-based fibers, okay? Animal-based fibers are made of proteins. Plant-based fibers are made of cellulose, which means they're just like easier to bend. The fact that it is like crisscrossy weave also makes it easier to bend. It makes it easier for things to stay in that bend. Synthetic fibers are plastic. They're just naturally a little harder to bend than a cellulose or a protein. All right, that matters. The other thing that matters is you want these strips to be straighter than the most mediocre white man you know. The thing that was always eluding me with these, I think, has a lot to do with how straight the edge is that you do this with. The other reason it's important to have a woven fabric is with a woven fabric, it's super easy to get a straight as an arrow strip because you can just rip it like a barbarian. You can also, if you want to be like a very fancy person, you can get a thread from the edge and pull it out, and it will give you can't really see that, but there's a line here. You can pull out a thread from the weave, and that will show you a perfectly straight line along the weave. The biggest problem with trying to do a rolled hem, I think, and why I've struggled with it so much is, one, I've usually been trying to do it on a synthetic fiber. I would just cut it with my scissors or a rotary cutter, thinking if I measured it, then it would be perfectly straight. But you really need it to be as straight as it can possibly be, and the only way to do that is to use the weave itself. So ripping it is actually like a huge part of what made this work so well. And I just did this because I was being a little lazy, because I was like, oh, I forgot I can rip these. And so then, obviously, you need the rolled hemmed foot. Most machines come with this foot, which is why this has been something I've been trying to do for over a decade. For 13 years, I've been trying to do this, and it just never worked. Essentially, the foot has a little flippy in it, a little metal flip that you guide your fabric into it, and then press it down, and you kind of help the fabric fold as you put it in, and then you start sewing. And as you sew, the little metal foldy thing will fold your fabric over, hopefully into a little rolled hem. And if you've ever tried to do this, you've probably known that it's like, it kind of just does this. It doesn't roll all the way over. But what I've learned is that that's actually okay. Typically what happens when you do this is it'll fold it over once, and then you've got all these frayed edges and it doesn't look Another thing that was helpful is kind of holding it up, kind of in line with the machine, but a little bit, not really flipping the fabric with your hand, but into the little flippy thing. And then the thing I finally figured out, which I don't know, I'm sure somebody else has figured this out. The easiest way to do this and have it look insanely good is to just do it twice. Like, okay, you do it once. It's very easy to get it through a rolled hem foot and have it look like that, where it's just like flipped over once, but all of the raw edges are still out. Well, all you gotta do is run it through the machine again, and you get your most perfectest little tiny baby hem. Look at that thing. Look at that. Just do it twice. Make it feel special. Give yourself more and more. Make it fancy. And it's alcohol free because it's a baby. Twice. You don't me likey, dimmy. Hit the like button. Look at these baby hems. These are insane. I've struggled for 13 years to do this. And it just a couple little things make it work. Natural fibers make it work. Ripping the fabric makes it work. Holding it up a little bit makes it work. And then just do it twice. I was able to, like, if you're really careful, if you get really good at it, if you really finesse it, you can get it to go in one way. But I find that it's so much more consistent if you just do it twice. And like, yeah, you have to do it double, but it's worth it. And then they're so good. They're so beautiful. And I'm so proud of them. I've literally never been able to get them this tiny before. They're fully like 1/8 of an inch, which has just not been something I had in my repertoire. Now we get to the assembly. We're off the high of our baby hems. We've made the K-pop twice jokes. Even 3 years ago, I could not have made this collar. I would have never been able to do it because it's a sheer fabric. But it just, a huge part of why I was able to do this is that if you are traumatized by polyester chiffon and polyester organza, and you need to do some sheer stuff for cosplay, get you some 100% cotton voile, because it is so much easier to work with. It gives you that beautiful sheerness. It's not slippery. And I think that's the biggest thing, is there's a little bit of slipperiness. It's a little bit it's more wiggly. It's a little bit wiggly, but it's not slippery. So this started as, essentially what this is it's a big ruffle, a tiny ruffle, and then a collar piece in the middle. But I actually had a thing similar to this that I used as a pattern. Oh, using a existing piece of clothing as a pattern. I hardly ever do this, but I had this collar piece that goes with one of my favorite blouses that I wear with J Fashion. It's essentially what I wanted, and so what I did was I laid it out and just like traced out what the little collary piece looked like, and that gave me this little pattern. So then I cut that out of 2 layers of this cotton voile, and I did a couple things to make this easier for myself. So I was a little scared to do this because it's a collar in a very non-structured fabric. It's a structural thing in a non-structural fabric, and that's very difficult. Here's the thing I did that made this helpful. I did a stay stitch where the seam was going to go along every single edge. I pre-pressed the pieces before I did anything with them, using the stay stitch as a guide, and that then helped me when I went to do this. So I needed to get on one side of the collar, I needed to bag line big ruffle to the bottom of it, and then I took the little ruffle on that same one piece Did the same thing, bagline that. This is the part I was scared of. Now you've got one side that looks really good, and you've got all this ugly stuff on the other side. And now I needed to somehow cleanly get this slightly wiggly piece of fabric to sit perfectly onto this other slightly wiggly piece of fabric and top stitch around the edge and have all of that look really nice. But I was big brain. I took the wrong side of the collar and I basting sprayed it and then I stuck it down. So I didn't even have to pin it or anything when I did this. And then I just top stitched around the edge. I did end up adding this closes with a button and an elastic loop in the back. And I actually hand sewed the elastic loop in before I did the top stitching to help it also be in there. She's beautiful. Look at her. There's the inside. Like, look at that. We're gonna hit the Dover button for the big speech, okay? There's something about Saki Zo's art that inspires me to be more detailed, to push myself, to master sewing techniques that sit beyond my grasp even after all this time. It almost feels like the time she takes with pencil and paint needs to be respected in every stitch and fold. But it's okay to take a few shortcuts, avoiding a curved tuck here, an eyeballed lace layout there. Because in the end, we're really just recreating a piece of art in a different medium. And the thing that keeps art human is its flaws. And having people that want to listen to every detail of those flaws is such a blessing. A blessing that drives my motivation to do more. So thank you for being here and for the trumpet emojis, where I can spend the time to talk about the patterns, the tucks, the baby hems, all the things that usually end up on the cutting room floor. But I haven't even touched the finest details of this cosplay yet, or the larger story that I'd like to tell. With only a week and a half left until MetroCon, that might have to wait for something on the main channel. But hey, are you subscribed? Because did you even realize you're on my second channel right now? Because I look at my statistics and I think a lot of you don't know that. You should subscribe. This is an unprecedented amount of trumpet emojis, y'all.